I'm excited to introduce our next panel looking at the impacts of AI on the future of cybersecurity education, training, and workforce development. So please welcome to the stage Kerry-Ann, Barrett, Brian Fonseca, and Aamer, Charania.
Good morning, everyone. How are you? It's been a great conference, hasn't it? I've learned a lot, and believe it or not, I've been partners of FIU for over 8 years, and I've never been to a nice conference. So shamefully so, I'm here this year, and I'm really excited to be part of this. The topic that we're going to be discussing today is the impact of artificial intelligence on education and the cybersecurity workforce. In reference to educators, a senior EduCU's researcher has said, above and beyond the other risks with AI, the risk to our workforce is that they're already overwhelmed, and now we're asking all of these educators to do more things with AI, extra things. More broadly speaking, according to Darktrace, threat researchers have already observed a notable increase in email-borne and novel social engineering attacks like ChatGPT was released, but this trend represents only the tip of the iceberg as these types of threats are going to continue to grow. The cybersecurity industry is hastening to integrate AI to be able to respond to these technologies. And there's still a place, however, that where are the defenders, where are the practitioners? How do we ensure that we are creating a workforce to meet this ever-growing threat landscape? The role of AI in cybersecurity in 2024, we're already seeing as a multifaceted role, offering unparalleled opportunities for protection, presenting new challenges at the same time. It requires a nuanced approach, blending innovative defense strategies with vigilance against emerging threats. So by extension, to me, that means that our education system now has a unique opportunity that no other sector has. We now have an opportunity to innovate and to meet this new challenge and this new demand, to change ourselves, to innovate, to meet this new request of finding professionals. So today, I have to my left two distinguished gentlemen. Aamer serves as the head of applied machine learning at Best Buy, the world's largest consumer electronics retailer, addressing key human needs across a variety of areas, including entertainment, productivity, communication, security, nutrition. Prior to Best Buy, he was the regional head of the Center for Machine Learning at Capital One. So he carries two different experiences, but still at its core, he's been looking at the development of big data, machine learning products at Humana and Verizon, and he started his career as a research assistant at MIT. Brian is the director at the Jack D. Jordan Institute for Public Policy and is the founding executive director for the cybersecurity at FIU. FIU's university-wide interdisciplinary, emerging, preeminent program in cyber. Brian teaches in the Department of Politics and International Relations and is an international security fellow at the DC-based think tank New America. So let me begin, Brian, with you. This is a room full of cybersecurity educators and professionals. Can you start us off with a common definition of AI and what is happening broadly in the world of AI policy and government? And I think about some of the trustworthy aspects as well that AI systems are identified in the NIST framework.
Thanks, Kerry-Ann. First and foremost, thank you for moderating. This is probably the 10th, 11th time I've been on stage with Kerry-Ann. This is the first time in which she's moderating and I'm speaking. It's usually I'm moderating and she's speaking. So then I had to reflect back whether or not I tossed her really difficult questions to get a sense of whether or not this would be a breezy morning. Anyway, thank you so much. So it's a good question. Common definitions. So common definitions, a little tricky, but I do think the U.S. government has established a foundational definition that reflects a degree of flexibility, but also sort of clearly begins to mark the territory in terms of how AI systems are defined. And I think sort of building out of OECD and kind of part of the first the first AI Act in 2020, and then more recently, and I got to plug NIST and the AI risk management framework because they again foundationally sort of lay out what the definition is. And it essentially is inclusive of engineered or machine-based systems that, for a given set of objectives, produces outputs that are predictive, that make recommendations, that help shape decisions in virtual or real environments, and that those, that AI is also, to varying degrees, autonomous. So that's the base definition by which a lot of the more contemporary policy coming out on AI, serves to adapt to. So again, machines that can generate output that is, that provides recommendations, that provides prediction, that provides decisions to systems that are varying degrees of autonomy. And again, I think that's a great point of departure. Some of you in here may have some issues in terms of the, sort of the precision of the definition, but I think it leaves a degree of flexibility. But nonetheless, that's the baseline of which U.S. government, U.S. policy is operating from. You mentioned the NIST, AI risk management framework, which essentially lays out 7 characteristics of trustworthy AI. And the first is, so 7, there's valid and reliable, there's safe, secure and resilient, accountable, transparent, explainable and interpretable, privacy enhanced, and then fair with harmful bias managed. And so essentially valid and reliable is that the sort of the large language models, the engineering that undermines or underlies the system is again valid, and that the outputs are reliable and they can be validated and verified. That systems are safe, and that is they protect from injuries to humans, to materials, buildings, like a variety of different things that would imply a degree of safety. That they're secure and resilient, that they can adapt to sort of changes in the environment, that they're accountable and transparent, and that is that there is a degree of transparency that allows us to look underneath the hood on these models to ensure that these models are scripted in ways that, or developed in ways that we understand sort of the origins of them, and that there's also a degree of accountability built into, to the infrastructure, that is explainable and interpretable, and that is explainable that you could explain how the machine got to a particular output, and that you can interpret those outputs appropriately. Privacy enhanced, and that privacy enhanced technologies are also being deployed to sort of minimize data, and that they're fair, and that they're purged of things like cognitive bias or computational bias, or outputs that might cross really important ethical barriers. And so I think those 7 characteristics are really important in terms of how organizations should think about the integration of AI into their respective operations. And again, I think NIST has really laid this out. This is very recent. And so I highly recommend going to the risk, the AI risk management framework to sort of capture the guidance that they have for organizations employing AI in very trustworthy environments.
So I think, thanks for that, because I think thinking about the 7 characteristics and those recommendations, Aamer, and that's like at the macro level. If we come down to Dallas, can you give us maybe some specific examples as to how the industries in Dallas have been thinking about AI for business, and do they see there any risk associated with it?
Sure, absolutely. So when it comes to AI, Dallas is an amazing place. I already convinced Brian backstage to move to Dallas, almost.
And I'm almost there too.
But Kerry, with her British background, might take a little bit more work, but yeah, when it comes to Dallas, we have very diverse set of industries here. I'll give you an example. 6 years ago, I started a nonprofit, Dallas AI, supposed to be small, 50, 100 people. We are now over 6,000 members. That's the level of interest in applying AI. Those people represent financial services, insurance, retail, healthcare, airlines, telecom, technology, you name it, defense. All of these industries are super active in leveraging AI. And again, I would emphasize that Dallas may not be the best place to create AI technologies, but it is among the top places applying AI. How we apply AI depends a lot on use cases. For example, if whether it's Walmart or Best Buy or Amazon is building a product support system where an AI algorithm goes through product manuals, that information is already public. The needs of cybersecurity or the level of cybersecurity protections there are reasonably less compared to financial services, where somebody is applying for a loan, giving some of their most personal information out there and trusting a bank to take care of it. So it depends again a lot on the use case. Finally, fortunately, we have tons of framework already available. Some of the frameworks coming out of NIST, Brian already mentioned. Then there are also industry-specific frameworks. So think of it as a stack: foundational frameworks, then industry-specific. Even when it comes to industry-specific ones, the industries that are more sensitive, financial services, healthcare, they have organizations that drives the rules of the game there. So in financial services, when it comes to credit cards payments, we have PCI. When it comes to securities, we have SEC, and many more out there. So the point I'm making is that if you're applying AI in your industry, don't start from scratch. Look at what's already available and be prepared to update it. Because one thing that is constant in AI is the change. It is changing very fast. And with that, the needs of cybersecurity are also evolving.
So I want to stay with you a little bit more on that, Aamer, and on the point of it's a use case scenario sometimes to determine what you need. Thinking about what Brian mentioned about security and resiliency, we're in a room full of educators, and they're training up a workforce on cybersecurity. How can you advise them to pivot their educational programs to now focus on the cybersecurity needs for securing AI?
Sure. I would go with chasing the goal. What's the goal there? The goal is we protect our consumers from cyber attacks, from malicious activities online. That goal remains the same. An analogy here would be a physician. The goal of a physician is to keep her or his patients healthy. What does it require? It requires a foundational education that my cybersecurity friends already have. But then it also requires being aware of the diversity within the patients. My diet could be different than Kerry's. My physical activity levels could be different than Brian's. Of course, he's in Miami, so beaches, and I'm here in Dallas, usually indoors. So it differs. As a physician, I have to be aware of that, kind of like being aware of the use cases. Also, like a physician, it's both proactive and reactive. Proactive meaning, okay, these things could happen. We learned a lot from COVID. So let's prepare for the next pandemic. How can we do better? Reactive, there will always be things that we are not prepared for. Again, COVID, it happened. How do we adapt to it? The point I'm making here is that as cybersecurity professionals, be prepared to learn enough about AI that you can enhance the cybersecurity frameworks or protocols. One example I like to give, and there are many more, is 5 years ago, when it came to cybersecurity and AI, it was all about data protection. You know, there is a model, usually stateless. You pass some data to it, you get the response back. All the focus was on protecting the transfer and storage of data, encryption, all that good stuff. We didn't care much about the model itself because it was stateless. It would never store any information. Guess what? Things have changed now. When you are asking something to ChatGPT, the model itself is learning. When you go to your home and ask Alexa to switch on that light, Alexa is learning from your questions out there with a good intent, of course, to help you better. But yeah, there is now a paradigm where models themselves are storing information. It requires to ensure that some bad actor there doesn't game the model, doesn't pump up so much fake information on ChatGPT that it starts giving incorrect answers. It still gives incorrect answers, that's okay, right? But not influenced by some bad actors. Same goes for our things like personal assistants, Alexas and those out there. They learn from internet too. That needs to be protected in a framework. And by the way, you know, these tech companies are doing a pretty good job there. You know, they don't share anything that you tell Alexa. They don't share it with anybody else. All those things are there. But as we get these AI models more and more common, you can imagine it just takes one loophole, right, for a bad actor to take advantage of. So those things would keep on changing, and that's what requires that constant updating of the cybersecurity frameworks.
Thanks for that. I read recently in a Forbes article, they were making a case as to why we need to ensure that AI technology is included in our educational system. And they said, it's essential for us to teach our students what they need to know about using AI in their profession, to your point, Aamer, so that they will be able to take advantage of these technologies. Preparing students for careers in the era of AI, providing AI-based, personalized education is crucial. So Brian, thinking back to when cybersecurity became the new hot profession, it seems to be that this demand is now being rushed towards creating AI experts in organizations. Do you think that the competition for AI talent will potentially diminish the resources needed for us to be able to start harnessing good cybersecurity professionals? Because Aamer already described that it's not that they're opposed to each other.
Right.
There's a need to ensure they're integrated. So what are your views on how
that's a
that
great
will
point.
work?
And by the way, cybersecurity is still a hot job, right? We're just adding another hot job to it, which is AI. But to your point, I mean, there's an incredible degree of interconnectivity between, you know, AI and cyber. And I tend not to think about AI as a job, but more of a competency, right, with a sort of range of skill sets that are needed. And we can talk a little bit later more about what universities are doing. But the challenge for organizations is that organizations need a balance between making investments in innovation and competitive advantage to ensure, you know, sort of solvency of their organization continues to, you know, to do well in markets, against the protection of assets and data that ensures that their business stays in business, right? And so this is the balance in terms of what organizations have to do in the investment side of the technology ecosystem that their organizations embrace. And so while these things seem like they move in different directions, there's a tremendous degree of interconnectivity between, you know, among the skill sets required, both in the AI space as well as in the cybersecurity space. And what I see organizations doing more of now, and certainly Aamer can talk more to this, is the blending of those roles, where sort of technology professionals that organizations are bringing in are balancing between providing the expertise on adopting AI, while at the same time providing the expertise to secure the infrastructure of the organization. And I think sort of that hybrid model is going to continue to be a dominant model, particularly among small businesses, medium-sized businesses that don't have, an excess of capital. If you have an excess of capital, you may be able to be a little bit more sophisticated in how you structure, in balance between the two. But I think that's certainly one thing that you're going to see. And the second is, Denise said this yesterday in her opening comments, that professionals in the AI space are a net positive in terms of addressing the cybersecurity workforce issues, because they're bringing technologies into organizations that also contribute to the securing of the digital infrastructure of those organizations. And so it's tough to kind of look at it as a zero sum in which one hired for AI means one less for cyber. There's a degree of sort of hybrid and integrated between these roles. And then, of course, the technological attributes can really lend themselves well to helping organizations secure their respective infrastructure. And so while certainly organizations are going to be pressured in terms of how much they invest and how much they put forth in terms of strategy between innovation and protection of the organization, you're going to see a blending of that I think is probably more realistic to where organizations are going to go in the near term.
That's a good point, and I think when we think about the future of AI, there's actually an article again, and I'm giving you these anecdotes because one of the things I told Brian I wanted to get out of this panel, and I told Aamer, is that separation of fear in AI as you look at your educational tools that you have for you. And in an article called The Future of Education in a World of AI, Malik wrote, education will be able to adapt to AI far more effectively than any other industry, and in ways that will improve both the learning and the experience of instructors. Changes come into the classrooms, and I think it is important to focus on a positive version to help guide us through the uncertain times ahead. And it brings me to you, Aamer, in terms of if the classrooms and the educators are seeking to adapt themselves to meet this demand, how is industry approaching the idea of what talent they need? Because they have to be thinking about what talent to push to you.
Exactly, great question. So, I totally agree that education is one of the top sectors that is ripe for transformation, and AI can help a lot there. Example, I'm a father of 2 daughters, so I know what it takes for college education these days. And the cost of education is increasing far more than inflation. It's not sustainable. The reason being is that the best professors are being attracted by or lured by both the industry and the universities. How many students a professor can teach? 50, 100, 500, but that is the limit. With AI, a professor can have unlimited number of TAs, assistants, that can help the professor educate their students in a style, in a manner that students are comfortable with, and the professor feels, yeah, this is the knowledge that I want to spread out. I don't think so we are far from a time when we'll all have access to our best professors 24/7. And not only us, anybody in the world. Now, coming to that question about the industry, I think it also helps prepare our students for the industry by educating them not only about the concepts, but also leveraging these tools. Because when it goes to the industry, right, they are competing with people who are using those tools. So they are expected to do a lot more than those tools are doing. Lastly, these tools, these AI trained systems, if you may, they are trained on past knowledge. They are trained on what we already know. However, progress depends upon what we discover later. So for that, we'll always need humans. We'll always need great professors like Brian out there to find more. And we need to teach students in the same paradigm that, yeah, use these technologies to get to a baseline and then find more, discover more, and make these algorithms better. So it becomes a cycle that was always there, that we always learned, but this cycle is just going to be much faster. But I'm all in favor of transforming, or I would say even transforming, adapting AI in education. It just makes all of us, including students and professors, a lot more productive.
And on that use case, believe it or not, AI for Good actually offered up a similar example. One of the ways they believe that students can naturally acquire support in order to achieve their best grades, universities sometimes struggle to be able to have adequate teaching assistants.
Yeah.
So AI, they believe, according to AI for Good, that AIs can help to provide virtual learning assistants, chatbots, virtual classrooms that can provide instant support and feedback, both inside and outside of classroom hours. Recognizing that we do have a global world, you spoke about the pandemic, we now have students from all over the globe with different time zones, and lecturers aren't always available to be able to answer their questions when they need the answers during their assignments. So according to AI for Good, they believe that virtual support services can utilize natural language processing to answer students' queries, provide explanations, offer real-time feedback on their assignments. And believe it or not, AI for Good believes that this gives you back time as an educator, because now you have the ability to think beyond the day-to-day mundane tasks of being able to answer the same questions to 5 different students within an hour. So Brian, that is one use case that seems to give time back. But what are some of the other ways that universities can pivot to be able to use AI in education, and what can they do better to prepare their students to go into this future workforce that Aamer just described?
It's a great question. Instead of giving time back, divert time to things that may be more consequential to sort of student outcomes. And so, one of the, as cybersecurity professionals, one of the, the historical arguments about sort of automation and how automation would displace workforce and you'd have massive unemployment was the anecdote of ATM machines, right? ATM machines adopted for banks. They essentially minimized the need for tellers behind glass giving out cash. And so there was a lot of concern over how that was going to disrupt sort of the banking industry. And what happened? ATMs rolled in, fewer tellers were needed. Tellers instead were being retrained and shifted to providing better service support to customers. And you think in the educational space, I think one of the things that universities need to step up on is the ability to mentor and coach students towards the careers they're progressing. And so you might take like an ENC 1101, English 101 or a Math 101 course in which a lot of the content can be delivered by machines, and you pivot faculty to spending more time with the mentoring and coaching of students as they move through their respective progression of the institution. So I think that's the kind of disruptions that we're going to see in terms of AI. I tend to think about AI's disruption in higher ed sort of in 2 general spheres. The first is how we incorporate AI in the delivery of education within the institution. And then the second is what skills are we integrating in the institution that prepares students for a workforce that is undoubtedly going to touch AI in important ways, regardless of what industry vertical, whether that's construction or engineering or accounting, whatever that is, you're going to have to interact with machines in far more sophisticated ways than we have in the past. So in terms of delivery of education, the things that you've stated, Kerry-Ann, again, the ability to augment these tools in the classroom. As you can imagine, ChatGPT comes out, faculty panic and say, wait a minute, we're going to have to ban AI because we don't want plagiarism in the classroom. And we know students are going to ChatGPT, putting in the essay prompts, and they're submitting those assignments without any real interaction with the assignment itself. And so there was an instinctive move by universities, at least ours, and others certainly, to consider banning AI in the classroom. And I've often advocated that was a very bad move, that we should be finding more meaningful ways to augment AI in the classroom. And we had some faculty lean forward. We had one faculty member that decided, to embrace, chatbots to help with assignments. Essentially, if you were going to do that, you had to submit your prompts, and you had to submit the series of prompts so that you showed your work, in essence, right? So that faculty could evaluate the degree of interaction you had with those machines. We had some faculty say, well, we're going to put more emphasis on the oral presentation instead of the written assignment, or go to Blue Books back in the classroom. So there's an adaptation, as Aamer was pointing out, in the classroom in terms of how faculty are embracing it. I tend to think of it like the calculator, right? And how you integrate calculators now in classroom in fairly seamless ways. That's going to be how we adapt to AI in the classroom. And I think it's a disservice to the future of the workforce if we don't enable students to leverage those capabilities early rather than late. So banning it's not an option. The train's left the station. We have to embrace it, and we need to find ways to leverage it to ensure it enhances the output in the classroom. The other side, which is how are we producing talent for a 21st century AI-infused workforce. And I think that requires a degree of multidisciplinarity. AI shouldn't be just sort of taught in the silos of engineering colleges, for example, but across universities. In one of our colleges and at UF, for example, the expert on ethics and AI is not in engineering, but in the Department of Philosophy. And you have faculty in AI for business being, brought into the College of Business. Some colleges, I think UTSA is doing it, University of South Florida is doing it, where they're spinning out of their College of Engineering a College of Computing and AI and Data Science. So they're now segmenting traditional engineering colleges from computing, information systems, AI, and data science as sort of a separate, distinct college, which I think is going to be helpful in producing talent that's concentrated on, developing machines. But the reality is every vertical across the university is going to be impacted with AI, and so faculty need to start thinking about that. In our College of Arts and Science, our School of International Public Affairs, we're now bringing on faculty that have expertise in the impact of AI and democratization and governance. Our Public Administration and Policy Department is spinning out a degree on AI, advanced technologies, to teach public administrators how to leverage AI to enhance the delivery of public good. And so I think it's, again, one of those, multidisciplinary issues, or not issues, but certainly, themes that colleges across universities should adopt some degree of expertise. And again, I don't look at AI as a job necessarily. I look at AI as a series of competencies that enable the workforce to be more effective in doing their job. If you go to our, if you're ever in Miami and you come to our College of Hospitality, we have a humanoid, bartender that will make up the drink you need. Just tell the robot what you want. They can make it up. You can tell them actually what you think you want, and they'll figure it out for you. And they will serve you the cocktail of your choice, after hours, of course. But so I mean, every one of our colleges within the university seem to be adopting AI that's consequential to their respective trade.
And it's a good segue into my next question, because there seems to be so much good that AI could do.
Yeah.
Speaking to the tools that educators here could actually adopt and adapt as well. But then we're not living in a vacuum. And the reality is that cybersecurity experts have highlighted that the potential of AI to automate the work that criminal and bad actors do, it's making their jobs even easier. They've already had malware, or they have a hacker for hire. Those things are already happening, and now it could be automated with AI. So I would ask you, though, given the emergent trends in AI and its capability, how can we then better prepare cybersecurity professionals to meet this demand? What should they be thinking about as they look ahead in their field, given the threat? I'm asking you, you're the one who's like, and then Aamer as well, both of you, because this is the educational aspect,
Yeah.
and then Aamer as well.
I mean, first teach them not to be bad guys, right? I mean, that's maybe the first thing we do. No, I mean, the rise of adversarial AI is going to be a real issue.
Yeah.
The ability to automate the delivery of cyber attacks. And I remember talking to leadership from Microsoft years ago, and I asked them what the biggest concern was, and they said, our biggest concern is, and this is sort of pre, the kind of heightened conversation we're having around AI today, But the biggest concern was a worm that could think for itself, act for itself, and it can sit in your system and just completely, in an autonomous way, navigate your system and find the opportune time to strike. And so that was their big concern, was the integration of AI into the delivery of cyber attacks. And I think that still holds true today. But it's this machine-on-machine concept in the context of cyber that I think we might see more of in the future. The automation of not just the sort of offense side of what attackers do, but the automation of what defenders are doing. And so, again, this is where I mentioned earlier that blending of cybersecurity and AI, and as you start to see colleges of engineering spin out, schools that are focused on AI and computing science, keeping them in the same discipline, I think is going to be really healthy, because there is so much overlap between how we protect digital infrastructure and the machines that we rely on to help us do that. And again, that goes back to, how do we chip away at this, several 100,000 shortage in workforce, and machines are going to, in part, help provide cybersecurity professionals with the tools to do that. So I think, again, conditioning cybersecurity professionals to adopt and help produce, sort of the next generation of technologies and tools in the AI space that will help address cybersecurity issues is going to be really important.
And Aamer, because you already mentioned that Dallas AI has so many industries, what are your views on this?
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more with Brian that as we are progressing, as we are becoming more productive, both the good actors and the bad actors are becoming more productive. So as we are using AI for good, the bad actors are also using AI for bad. I think what requires is having the awareness around AI not only limited to AI experts, but also to other stakeholders, especially cybersecurity. I'll give an example. The requirement to protect data at certain level comes from cybersecurity experts. How we implement that 128 or whatever encryption is, that is left to computer scientists. It's totally okay. But the cybersecurity experts need to know enough about what's available out there, what can be hacked, to come up with that requirement that is needed. Same goes for newer AI algorithms, large language models, the example that I gave earlier, that can store data. Our cybersecurity friends need to be involved in how these models are working so they can develop the requirements around the frameworks that will safeguard us. And that's where, to Brian's point, right, these things go hand in hand. It cannot be dealt in silos.
And don't judge me for what I'm about to say, because none of you know me. But I don't have Siri in my house, but my sister does. And I remember just having nothing to do in the kitchen, and I said, "Hey Siri, who's better, you or Alexa?" And Siri actually answered. Siri was like, "We're both intelligent AIs. We have an ability to be able to learn from each other." She gave that nice voice. I was like, "Siri, come on, you do plan to take over the world, right?" And she's like, "They've put enough safeguards around me to be able to not." So I challenge you today to go home and have a conversation with Siri. She have thought about this. And it brings me to the question, Brian, what are the ethical considerations?
I thought you were going to ask, when is it going to take over the world?
No. I did ask her that, but yeah, so have a conversation.
The machines are keeping it a secret, okay? We'll never know.
But like thinking about the ethics of it,
Yeah.
what are some of the ethical considerations that organizations should keep in mind when implementing AI technologies?
Yeah, I mean, so we mentioned a few of them. Certainly, there's a lot of concern over, the output of machines and whether or not those outputs are generating objective, honest results, because the training that those machines have received is from objective and honest data. There's a couple of sort of anecdotes out there about, how they've leveraged AI to do things like predict recidivism rates and whether or not that was biased towards a particular demographic in the prison system that wasn't necessarily getting a fair and objective, sort of response from leveraging machines to help judges determine whether or not to parole, or not. In the banking, and finance sector, having machines help predict the likelihood that someone is going to repay their debt was also often being, fed or trained by flawed data, or data that was not complete. Maybe not flawed data, but incomplete data that wasn't, accurately reflected in the output. And so thinking about things like computational bias, I think, is a really important ethical challenge that, that I think policy is going to have to help us, establish guardrails for. And so on one end, you have certainly the outputs and how those machines are driving decisions that are not fair and objective. And if you go back to sort of the NIST, AI risk management framework, it builds in this concept of fairness to ensure that machines are being trained on complete and objective data so that the output is fair and the ethical considerations are being managed appropriately. So that's on one end. Then you have the data privacy piece, which is also in and of itself, a concern for citizens, and that is, how do we leverage, privacy-enhancing technologies, techniques, things like sort of minimizing, personal data, aggregating outputs so that you can, again, de-risk a little bit in terms of the amount of personal data, data that should be protected that's out there and accessible, to users. Ensuring that there's informed consent built into, to how you approach capturing data, from potential users. And so, I mean, incorporating privacy-enhancing technologies, I think, is really important to protecting that aspect of it. But certainly, again, the overall ethical concern is something that, I think organizations are continuing to grapple with. States and the federal government are also sort of grappling with how we put, definitive guardrails around the ethical concerns that are being raised from AI. And so this idea that machines are going to take over the world is probably a long ways away. Kerry-Ann, I'm not saying it's not going to happen. There's some interesting data out there among AI scientists that have weighed in on that, and I'll leave that to you if you want to lose some sleep. You do some research on that. But I think that in the interim, it's these adoptions of technologies to help make decisions that could have unfair consequences for particular, demographics or parts of our societies that we should be most concerned about. Even in the delivery, to ensure that there's inclusivity in the delivery of these capabilities. I had the opportunity to present to our state's House earlier this year as they were teeing up a series of legislative initiatives to put guardrails, things like expanding the defamation law to include deepfakes, banning deepfakes from political campaigns. I mean, a range of things. And what was being left out of the conversation often was, again, the ethical guardrails that need to be put in place to ensure that, again, whatever and however these technologies are being adopted, there was a degree of fairness and equity across the delivery of these machines. So I think that's going to be a big issue that we'll have to continue to tackle. I think organizations should be embracing, those concerns now and adopting those concerns as they innovate within their organizations, and again, continue to lean on, policy to, and I'm not sort of talking in the context of regulation, but I'm talking in the context of putting guardrails in place that protect, the more vulnerable in our society.
And thanks for that. And unfortunately, we are at the end of our time, and I wanted to thank both of you because thinking about AI from a diagnosis perspective, thinking about it in terms of blending roles and leveraging the tools that are already out there, and thinking about the computational biases and ensuring that we are using our educational system to raise up defenders. And as Brian says, ensure that we praise the good guys to be able to be the other side of the screen that's happening with attacks. I want to thank my distinguished gentlemen for this conversation. And I also wanted to just tell you about an event that is coming up. We do partner as the Organization of American States with FIU and NICE, where we pivoted during the pandemic to have something called the Regional Initiative on Cyber Education and Training. It's in Spanish because this year our gracious host will be the government of Dominican Republic. We invite all of you on October 3rd. You can plan your vacation around coming down to our Reset conference to experience how NICE looks like in Latin America and the Caribbean. Thank you so much and have a great day.
Excellent.